Hello and welcome to another fun-filled edition of Adam's Music Box, where it was on this day in 2006 when one of the most interesting songwriters and performers, and one of the most important of all time, died. And that was, of course, Syd Barrett, a man whose death was made all the more mysterious by the fact that he hadn't been seen by the public for around 40 years before that time, and even by his former friends and colleagues for about 30 years because we all know the story about him, sort of his mind slipping away from what we would consider normal and becoming reclusive. But before that, he was a wonderfully, effervescent, to coin a phrase from him, person, and arguably the most talented songwriter ever in Pink Floyd. And that's a big claim because Roger Waters is obviously a wonderful songwriter and a conceptual genius. Dave Gilmour, a great arranger and a great songwriter. But there was something about Syd's music that, even when you compare it against the very futuristic and pioneering stuff that Pink Floyd did after he left, there was something about his stuff that sounds like it could have come at any time. You could imagine it being very sophisticated music of the ragtime pop era of the late 19th century. You could imagine it being sort of trad jazz. You could make arrangements of his singer songwriting songs and put them in a trad jazz context. You could almost, if you changed some of the harmonics a bit, imagine them as country and western songs. There is so much you could do with Syd Barrett's songs, and yet they would always be Syd Barrett's songs because the great thing that he did as a songwriter was he had a harmonic element of surprise. You never knew what chord was coming next. You never knew if there was going to be a key change where you least expected. You never knew rhythmically if you'd be plodding along in 4/4 and then he'd hit you bam by transitioning into an odd meter. And that is just super sophisticated and intriguing songwriting. But it wasn't done for the sake of it, because even though the surprises were great in number, they never felt gratuitous. They were always something that was so indelibly tied to the nature of the song that he was developing. And of course, there's too many good Syd Barrett songs to make, but one that always touches me was Dark Globe. Um, that was a solo work of his, and it's sort of a requiem for someone losing himself. It's a warning to friends about what will you really think depending on what happens. Just a sad song, but without being grossly sentimental. There's something about it that's philosophical. There are elements of surprise to both the musical structure and the lyrics. It's a perfect Syd Barrett song. So I think that while we can talk about the mystery of Syd Barrett and talk about the fun and interesting performances when he was with Pink Floyd that he co-founded. The songwriting itself is so extremely sophisticated that you could argue that he's one of the more interesting songwriters of all time, even though he was only active in the professional scene for a few short years. Rest in peace to the wonderful Syd Barrett. And as always, like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.